Hello and welcome to this session, How to Become a Superhero Without Even Leaving Your Desk. With global warming on the rise, viral pandemics affecting literally every nation, and extinction threatening more than 40,000 species around the world has never needed superheroes more. So are you ready to use your powers to save the world? Well, in this session, we're going to explore various different ways in which our superpowers can really help us to make a positive impact on society and the planet in which we inhabit. As I mentioned, we have never needed superheroes more. As the UN predicted, 2021 is literally going to be catastrophic. In terms of worldwide humanitarian crises, for example, the World Food Programme Executive also predicted this as well. There's a really stark outlook as we start to look into the future as well. It's being highlighted at summits like COP26. And just looking at 2021 so far, we can see the catastrophes that are going on. We've got the global pandemic of COVID-19, which has literally affected everyone. We've had wildfires that have ravaged California and Australia and many other countries. We've had volcano eruptions. So, for example, in Italy and Guatemala, we've had huge flooding and persistent heavy rains. So we really are experiencing the effects of all of these different factors within these catastrophes and within these sort of events that are affecting everyone within the planet. So this is why we need superheroes and why we need them now. So what makes a superhero? So to turn to the answer for that, I turn to the legend Stan Lee, who arguably is extremely qualified in defining a superhero. So he defined a superhero as a person who does heroic deeds and has the ability to do them in a way that a normal person couldn't. So in order to be a superhero, you need a power, firstly, and one that's more exceptional than any power a normal human being could possess. And you need to use that power to accomplish good deeds. So when we look at that definition, okay, we can do heroic deeds, but what power do we have to be able to become the superheroes we need? Well, actually, the power of programming. You guys as IT professionals, whether you're an architect, whether you're a designer, whether you're a software developer or engineer, you have powers within those skill sets. So whether that's designing applications, building applications, testing applications, designing the security of applications, this power of programming and technical knowledge and power enables you to have a superpower. And it's one that many within the globe don't have, and that you can contribute to be able to really use your powers for good, as the definition states in a superhero. So whether it's data analysis, software engineering, application design, web development, IoT, networking, whatever your superpower is, how can you now use that superpower, become a superhero, and use it for good? So if we take a look at the global issues around the world, of which there are many, the UN has actually come up with a list of 17 main goals that they'd like the world to achieve, and we can take a look at how our superpowers within IT and technology can enable us to actually go ahead and help to tackle some of these really important global issues. So for example, some example projects that I've got here to show you cover a wide variety of those. So how about protecting the animal kingdom? I mentioned about the fact that there are loads of animals that are threatened by extinction. And in fact, I think there's 41,000 species on the IUCN Red List, and out of those, 16,000 are endangered species threatened with extinction. So it's really vital that we take steps to be able to protect them before they become extinct. And one such project that we did to try and help this was we worked, a couple of volunteers within the Hursley Labs, that's our UK research and development labs for IBM. We got together and worked with a local zoo nearby to try and help them to reduce their electricity usage. So zoos are a fantastic place for us to go to be educated and to learn about these animals, and especially for preservation programs as well. And they really help us to protect our endangered species and inspire and educate our communities. But zoos come at a cost. Electricity is needed to be able to keep the different enclosures at the various temperatures and sort of conditions that each of those animals needs that isn't native to that particular country. And this electricity produces carbon, which ironically is sort of a lot of the cause of why these animals' habitats are often inhabitable for them now. So how can we enable zoos to limit their carbon emissions, reduce their electricity needs, and thus contribute less towards global warming that is causing so many of these animals to lose their natural habitats? So essentially, this zoo used infrared heaters for bedding areas for many of their animals, especially the Nala. So there's an example picture here of a Nala, it kind of looks like a deer. And many other animals like the Nala don't actually sleep all in one go like we do at night. They take sort of power naps here and there throughout the day, throughout the night. So often when the zoo had the electricity on all night, it was actually wasting energy because half the time the Nala weren't in there sleeping. So this was causing the zoo to spend over £150,000 on electricity to really provide heat for these bedding areas for the animals to sleep in when the animals weren't even there. So we came up with a solution of, okay, how can we use IoT sensors to be able to be more efficient? And IBM then worked with Marwell Zoo to be able to create this solution. So you can see the basic outline of what we managed to create. So essentially we put thermal sensors which were mounted inside the animals' bedding areas. They collected data on whether there was an animal present. That data was uploaded to the cloud and it was analysed using machine learning to be able to detect within that thermal image, was there an animal present? And we were able to train that model using known images from a visual camera as well. And the heaters were then switched on or off automatically according to whether there was a presence of an animal. You can see sort of what it looked like in real life here. So that was like an architectural diagram. These were the types of IoT sensors we used. You can see not a huge amount of money to purchase equipment like this, and actually fairly easy to assemble. And the types of thermal images we were getting, we were able to correspond with a visual image to be able to train our machine learning model. And you can see the visual images there based on sort of whether they were accurate or not with the thermal imaging. And this solution enabled us to bring together artificial intelligence, IoT, and the cloud to all come together to solve a real world problem, reducing carbon emissions and enabling zoos to do the job they do so well, to protect our endangered species and educate us about the natural world. And so this was a fantastic step forward in using technology for good, using our powers for good. Another example is, okay, how about we turn to sort of more humanitarian crises now, rather than those in the natural world? So how do we protect communities during natural disasters, especially those who are more prone to it and perhaps less prepared, using technology? Well, these natural disasters often occur in sort of remote areas or perhaps developing nations, and often communication can be really poor in natural disasters. But actually, communication is essential to be able to work out which people are in need most, where we need to send emergency services to, whether there's anyone who's in a life-threatening situation. So it's especially important that we have that communication during these natural disasters when we're providing this vital help and resources to be able to protect those within the community. So this is a massive problem because often this infrastructure goes down during these natural disasters. So how can we enable technology to be able to provide reliable communication to those in need and give better forewarning of these events? So there's a project within our Call for Code competition. So if you've not heard of Call for Code, head to the Call for Code website. It's a competition we run every year within IBM in collaboration with many charities and external organizations. And it's essentially there to really enable technology professionals to come together, work together across the globe to tackle global problems. So this was the 2018 winners, and their project that they created was called OWL, standing for Organization, Whereabouts and Logistics. So it was an IoT and software-based solution that enabled us to create this communication network. So it was made up of what they called ducks. So they were little IoT devices made up of different types of ducks. So you had papa ducks, mama ducks, and duck links. And essentially these duck links were able to connect to other ducks. So the duck links connected to the mama ducks, and the mama ducks were able to connect to the papa ducks, and the papa ducks were actually the ones that were able to connect to the cloud. The duck links were designed to be really small sort of IoT devices that just contained a computer board, a radio antenna, and a battery pack. So really small and lightweight, not much bigger than a smartphone really. and they were all enclosed in a waterproof case, so very portable, able to withstand any conditions within this natural disaster. They were also designed to float. So we'd be able to send out these different types of duck devices to be able to create this cluster duck mesh. So it's creating essentially a mesh network to be able to quickly and temporarily re-establish a basic level of connectivity using long-range radio networks to be able to send across speech-based communications using things like conversational systems like Alexa or Facebook Messenger to a central application. So this way we were able to create, to be able to establish reliable communication using this mesh network of ducts and be able to send that up to a central cloud application, which would then be transformed into an intelligent dashboard for first responders to be able to actually identify which civilians needed help most urgently and to be able to assign resources and people to those people in need. So really, we were able to have an impact in terms of enabling first responders to really manage disaster situations, coordinate resources, and learn about weather patterns, and to be able to get more information through data analytics in the cloud. So this was a fantastic project, again, combining technology together, cloud technology, IoT solutions, to be able to produce tech for good, to be able to help us use our powers as superheroes for the greater good of society. Another example is Prometheus. This was our 2019 winner. This was another AI-based solution which was designed to help us monitor and act on firefighter health. Firefighters have to go into extremely dangerous situations, helping others and saving others in the face of huge fires often, especially for those occurring within, say, California and Australia recently. So this solution was, can we use AI to be able to help monitor and act on their health and safety in real time and over the long term? So essentially there was a small device which you can see in the image here, and it's a health device that gets strapped to the firefighter's arm or on their body somewhere, and it has multiple sensors that help to measure things like key variables like temperature, humidity, smoke concentration. Those values are then collected together, distilled down and displayed in a simple color-coded dashboard at the Fire Command Center. You can see roughly what it looks like on the right-hand side at the bottom image here. And essentially, this was to help protect them. So if they were going into a heavy smoke area for a long period of time, if they haven't moved for a long period of time, perhaps send someone over to check that that firefighter is still okay, pull them out if they've been exposed to too much smoke, essentially protect those who are on the front line helping us to tackle these climate crises and sort of catastrophic events. So that was another example of tech for good through our Call for Code competition. There's another one called Ibm Graph. So I mentioned about the fact that many of these natural disasters, it would be great if we could predict them to a greater accuracy level, to be able to give communities in those areas greater warning of when these natural disasters were coming, to be able to get them out of harm's way and out of danger, so that we don't have to put solutions in place like the cluster ducks, because they should have already evacuated. So how can we do this? Well, a lot of the time, natural disasters can be predicted through the weather. But often, weather forecasting, often in less developed areas of the world, isn't extremely accurate and isn't very timely. In most areas, weather models run at relatively coarse resolutions of about 10 to 15 kilometers, and the updates only really happen every 6 hours. So often, you're looking at weather data that can be up to 10 hours old, which isn't extremely accurate and doesn't help you, especially if it's at a 10-kilometer radius. So we came up with an IBM with the Ibm Graph Project. So this essentially allows us to be able to reduce down that level to be much more fine-scaled. So it's now a 3-kilometer resolution and is updated every hour. So this is really about utilizing supercomputer powers to be able to assimilate these huge quantities of data. We're looking at tens of terabytes worth of observations about conditions every day. And we're looking at performing about 2 trillion computations per second on that data to be able to produce this level of scale. And by using these supercomputers to be able to provide communities, farmers, and societies within less developed parts of the world to have better weather predictions, which enables them to get out of harm's way if there is a natural disaster coming, but also to better predict things like crop cycles, to be able to plant their crops at better periods of time, and enable them to be more sustainable as communities because they have this increased information, which is more accurate and more fine-scaled. So this is another example of how we can utilize technology, again, to help those in other countries who perhaps don't have access to this technology and don't have the privilege that we do of having really up-to-date weather forecasts that we often take for granted in developed countries or developed aspects of the world. So this is another example of tech for good. How about preventing pollution? This is a huge one, and often one that we think about within sort of climate change, and is often the cause of many natural events that are occurring and impact on our environment. And in fact, it's not just about the environment, it's also a massive impact on humans as well. So, it's one of the biggest killers, and it affects more than 100 million people worldwide. So how can we have an impact upon reducing pollution through things like open source? Well, actually, a friend of mine has produced a dashboard to be able to provide those within the city of Sheffield in the UK a live, up-to-date information on what the pollution levels are like within their part of the city. This is all about educating people about the impact that they can have upon reducing those pollution levels and understanding just how that could affect their health based on where they're living, and really bringing it back to them to raise awareness and raise sort of that willingness to be able to reduce their pollution contribution. So that's just one example of open source trying to really tackle that pollution issue. And that leads into climate change. There are tons of these natural disasters. A lot of this is often attributed to our impact on climate change. And in fact, it's been predicted that the worst impacts of climate change could be irreversible by 2030. And more than 1 million species are at risk of extinction by climate change. So how can we decrease our impact through software development? And actually, this is something that a lot of you guys, especially because a lot of us work within applications and enterprise technology, this is something that we can all contribute to without even taking up an extracurricular project or activity. And that's looking at how efficient our applications are, especially when we're utilizing things like cloud infrastructure, which is running on data centers. 3% of the world's energy consumption is accounted for by data centers, and this trend is continuing to rise. Things like mining cryptocurrency alone consumes the energy of an entire country like Chile. And one of the most worrying prediction models, which you can see on the right-hand side here, predicts that electricity used by ICT could exceed 20% of the global total by the time a child born today reaches their teens. So have you thought about the performance of your application and what impact that's having on the sort of climate change and on the world in a global scale? By enabling our applications to be much more efficient in terms of the energy and resources they're using within data centers, we can each have an impact on that global data center usage and electricity usage within IT, and help to reduce that so that we're not reaching these scaringly worrying predictions in terms of our energy forecasts. So that's something that we can all do with our superpowers, is take a look at our own applications and see how we can reduce that usage, reduce that energy consumption, and help to reduce our impact on climate change. So I've given you a few examples of projects within the open source that we've gotten involved with at IBM, volunteering projects, and things that we can do in our everyday, day-to-day roles within sort of enterprise development to be able to utilize our superpowers for good and enable us to become superheroes to help these global issues. So now it's time for you guys to take up the mantle. It's time for you guys to use your superpowers and become these superheroes, helping us tackle all of these global issues using technology. And to help you guys, if you want to get started, I've made a list essentially of some fantastic projects that you can get involved with. There's something called the World Community Grid. This is all about utilizing your unused computing power to help scientists around the world tackle climate change and issues like rainfall shortages in Africa by running processing on that unused computing power. So if you want to check that out, there's a link there. Missing Maps. This is a fantastic project, one that I've gotten involved with myself. This is about really creating an open and collaborative project where you can help to map out areas where humanitarian organizations are really trying to meet the needs of vulnerable people, where maps aren't perhaps as accurate as we might have in our own countries. And so you can go in and help to identify buildings or potential points of interest within areas that aren't mapped and are in need of humanitarian help. So that's a fantastic project. I definitely recommend checking that one out. The link is there. There's also the Humanitarian Data Exchange. This is all about helping to extract key data needed by humanitarian workers to address critical needs in a crisis. So it's about looking through things like PDF documents and transferring that into a database so that it can be easily found and utilized. So check that out if you're interested in sort of that transformation work. Career Village is another fantastic one. This is an online platform in which students can essentially ask career questions that are answered by people working or perhaps worked in that field. So all you need is a LinkedIn account to start helping students, and you could be helping students around the world. This is a global sort of platform. And if you don't want something that's more technology focused, perhaps just want to use technology to help others, then this is a fantastic one to really inspire the next generation of software developers who might be interested in tackling many of these issues. There's also Amnesty Decoders. This is a network of digital volunteers that really helps to conduct research into global human rights violations. So if you're more interested in the humanitarian side of these sort of global issues, then check out this project here using this link. And then there's Catch a Fire, which is another fantastic search engine. So this is a volunteer search tool exclusively for online volunteer projects. So if you're interested in spending time dedicating your superpowers to a particular volunteering project, you can select from many within this website. So there's a timeline that can range from anywhere from just an hour's work to several weeks. Whether you have just an afternoon or several, you can use this website to pick up and volunteer your time to projects that are sort of not-for-profit organizations that are running them. And yeah, volunteer your time that way. There's also Points of Light Engage, which is another sort of aggregate website. So if any of the projects I didn't mention don't appeal to you and you want to find your own, then you can either check out the previous Catch a Fire website or this Points of Light Engage website. This one helps to pull different volunteer opportunities from sites around the internet to provide sort of a really comprehensive database of volunteering opportunities around the world. You can search through them and non-profits can then post and manage event signups and visitors are invited to start their own project on their own as well. So this is just a one-stop shop for loads of different volunteering opportunities that you can check out. So it's time for you guys to get involved, whether it's one of the projects I've mentioned or whether it's something that you've been thinking about and haven't quite sort of got the oomph to do yet. Please, I hope that this presentation has given you that oomph, given you that motivation to really get involved in a volunteering project or create your own to tackle these global issues and become a superhero using your IT superpowers. If you want to check out the Call for Code challenges that I mentioned, the website is there. Or if you want to check out a list of open source projects that are available for you to contribute to, there is also a list there as well. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully I've inspired you to take action today and to really utilize your superpowers without even needing to leave your desk. So thank you very much for listening. I've been Grace Jansen, and if you have any questions, hopefully I'll be able to answer them now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Grace. So guys, I hope now all of you know how to become a superhero and use your superpower to change the world and do great projects with the colleagues from around the world.